supporting you in your dog parenting journey. The Dynamic Dog Owner with Debbie Potter.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Dynamic Dog Owner, the podcast designed to support you, the dog parent, in your dog parenting journey. Now, some of you will know, some of you may not know, if you follow us on Instagram, I am a huge fan of the Lake District. It is my favourite place in the entire world. I've been visiting every single year for the last 20 years, which makes me feel very, very old. It was the first place me and my husband went on holiday together, and we've been going back every year. It's beautiful, why wouldn't you love it? But it's a lovely place to go walking, and it's great walking your dog. Now, obviously, a lot of us aren't used to long walks with our dogs or hikes with our dogs, and it may not be something you've ever considered before, but I thought it was a good opportunity to talk about hiking with a dog, what it involves, things we need to consider before we go hiking with our dogs, and some anecdotes as well. Because I have been on walks before where I've needed some help with my dogs. And weirdly enough, like the week after or while I was away, I can't remember, I followed the local mountain rescue up there because why not? It's good to pick up hints and tips, but also it's nice to hear about stuff that goes on. And one of the call outs, say around that time, was a dog who needed rescuing, not the family. It was the dog that needed rescuing down off the mountain, off the belt. So hence I thought it was a good opportunity to talk about dogs, hiking, and the things we maybe need to consider before taking to hiking. Now, obviously, some of these things might not be relevant to you. You don't want to be fast and so good hike. To me, it's a good few hours, or all day, ideally. So I think one of the main things to work out is the environment actually good for your dog in terms of what are the rules? So some places you need to keep your dog on a lead, ideally. Places like coastal paths and sheer drops on levels and mountains. Ideally, keep your dog on a lead and work out whether that is actually suitable for you and your dog. Because some dogs are quite happy staying on a lead, other dogs aren't. So if it's the type of lead for safety, your dog probably needs to stay on a lead, and they are awful on the lead and they are better off the lead, then obviously they're going to take a piece of break for you. So work out this kind of place do you think good for me and my dog. And I know for myself, there's some walks I don't take certain dogs on because I go, no, it's too sheer drops for them, it's too narrow for them, it's not right for them because they already find things hard. So I'll only take my dog that is really, really amazing on the lead, and pretty much if I had the lead on or off, he's glued to my side the whole time anyway, because that's just him. It's not like a training, wow, look at me. That's his nature. He just wants to be glued to my side. So there are walks I'll take him on and I'll leave the other at home because the paths are too steep, paths are too narrow, it's too sort of sheer one side. I go, no. If they pull the wrong direction, I'm a goner. And that's kind of a safety thing. And the thing is, it could be any dog. It's not always the big bouncy dogs. I remember years and years and years ago, this is quite hot kids, so it's probably about like 18, 19 years ago. We took my old docile, chilled out golden retriever who was just an angel cake. He was lovely. We took him to Glastonbury and we walked up the top, which speaking of a bit, it's like a building statue, a building archway on top of Glastonbury top. And very, very steep. You go round and round and round, up. And on the way back down, he saw something like a rabbit, pulled, and then because we were busy walking down his naked feet and it was quite a narrow path, he obviously went. And he pulled my husband, who slipped down the hill a little bit after a rabbit. Now, this is something he'd never ever done before, but thankfully he was safe. It was a safe environment. Obviously just pulled my husband over, pain. He's cut his paw actually, and everyone gave him a lot of sympathy. And my husband's like, "You tried to murder me. Don't give the dog sympathy." Obviously in a jovial way. But any dog can do it. It's not just your bouncier, younger dogs. Any dog can see something and pull you. So you need to consider that first of all. Is the environment safe for my dog? And that is environment like terrain, that's the word. It could be hazards. So for example, rock faces, wildlife, that kind of thing. whatever you think of. It could be that kind of hazard. Is like, for example, again, my dog recently, we go to a beach in Norfolk and there's a bird nesting ground. If we get to that level, he is wired because he loves chasing birds. So we don't walk that point with him because we know he's going to get very, very excited because there's all the birds to chase. So it's the terrain and the environment. Check out if it's right for you and your dog first, because it's better to leave your dog at home or pick a different route than for someone to get hurt or for you to absolutely hate it. And then equally, it's about knowing that the terrain and the environment is good for your dog's limits. So, every dog is going to have a different level of fitness, different level of stamina. And, that depends on the weather, it depends on the dog, it depends on so many different things. Make sure that the place you're going to matches their ability. Because it's not fair taking not an unfit dog, but a dog who maybe isn't used to it on a massive long hike and then them getting injured or getting fatigued or going, I can't do anymore, and just stopping, because you need to have a way of getting them home, which I have been in that situation once. I'll tell you about that later. It's not always easy, so make sure the difficulty, the length, the stamina required is suited for your dog. And they're fit for yourself, because obviously the downside of that is that you might need to go out mountain rescue and them to rescue your dog, not you. So it's a good thing to check. Obviously, when it comes to walking, we need to get the right equipment. So keeping on leaving the harness is a really good thing to do, because it depends on the terrain, it depends on where you are. Personally, I'm probably a little bit too cautious. When I'm on holiday, I will rarely let my dogs off lead. And it's purely because I go, one, what happens if I leave them? I can't stay up here looking for them. Two, it's that I don't know enough people in the area to come and search for them with me. And three, I just think I don't know what hazards are around. So, I can go onto a beach, I can go for a walk. Even if I walk, like in the lakes, I know the walks, I pretty much do my favourite ones. I know where I'm going, I know where stuff is, but there could still be a hazard. So to me, I need to know that they are on a lead and safe. That's a personal choice for me. Obviously, some people have a tracker. I do have a tracker since we did our challenge this year, and which was sponsored by Tractive. But I have it purely to see how far we've walked, not as if my dog gets lost, I can find him, because that's not for me. Harness for me is the key piece of equipment, because I can then use that to help the dog. If you don't have a collar, you can't help them physically in any way. Whereas if I've got a harness and my dog's struggling to get up or down, I can use that as not to lift them, but to support them. If they're struggling to get down, I can hold them a little bit if it's really steep and just be that extra little bit of support for them. Say, for example, they fall down a little ditch, I can use that harness to pull them out in an emergency. So for me, a harness is so much more safe than anything else. Again, personal preference. Now, we need to think about, obviously, depending on how long you're going to go for, have you got the right equipment? So, we talk about needing harness, etc., but have you got in your bag water for your dog, a bowl for your dog? Because, you don't know how long you're going to be. One of my walks this summer, I was on holiday, we planned it to be 3 hours. We took my teenager with me. It took 5.5 hours. So if I hadn't packed any supplies, we might have come a cropper, but we did. We were fine. But you also don't know if it's hot weather, you're going to need more. Years ago, again, with the perfect angel dog who pulled my husband down the Tuscany Shore, we went hiking. It was our honeymoon, and it ended up being a really warm day. We stupidly walked from, I can't remember where we were staying, Chapel Style to Grasmere, which I've done many times before. That was the walk I did this year. But it was really, really, really hot, and we walked further because we were further away. We walked to Grasmere, and then we were like, it's really hot. We should probably get the bus back because it's not fair on him. He's hot and bothered now because we left early in the morning and got off jet. We'll get the bus back. And we did. We got the bus back. We had to change buses. And then, stupidly, we got off at the wrong stop. Thankfully, I had no S-map. We worked our way back. But what should have been a 20-minute walk back from the bus stop turned into an hour and a half. And it was very, very hot. And we'd run out of water. We had to stop at cafes and say, could you fill our water bottle up, please? Because obviously we were thirsty, but so was the dog. So you need to prepare for eventualities. That being, water, bowls, but also first aid kit. What if your dog cuts himself? Depending on the terrain you're walking on, if you're walking on rocks or gravel, etc., you're going to need a first aid kit to be able to keep them safe should they need it. So one of the things we need to think about is the etiquette of where we're actually walking. Because obviously, generally, we hike in beautiful places. So areas of outstanding natural beauty, national parks, etc. And there is kind of a rules of how we should act, how we should behave. And a lot of it is around keeping up on the lead. Sticking to the path, sticking to the trail, because often there are ground nesting birds, there's wildlife, etc. So sticking to the path is an important one. Hence, for me, again, it's about keeping your dog on the lead. But we have to naturally obviously do the normal stuff we do at home, but we do have to pick up after our dog. We do have to be quiet and not be mindlessly barking or shouting about as we walk up, because it's a peaceful place. And personally, for me, I think people who live, for example, in the Lake District, I talk about the Lake District, where I've just been, it's where I do go hiking a lot. You know, farmers, etc., they naturally have a lot of people walking across their land because they're in an outstanding area of natural beauty. So it's going to happen. So we need to be really, really conscious and mindful to not have, much impact. That goes back to like leave no trace mentality, which engage. And that's just start. Leave No Trace. It's a really good film. If you haven't seen it, watch it. It's a really, really good film called Leave No Trace. But part of that comes back to like my girl guiding past as well. That Leave No Trace is about leaving nothing behind. And to me, that is no rubbish, no waste, no dog waste, but also no damage and no impact. And personally, I found this time I was away, the amount of people who had their dogs off lead. Now, obviously, this has been partly a little bit of judgment on my part. And I know we've talked loads about the podcast, you shouldn't judge. But, I'm assuming a lot of people walking in the Lake District are tourists. And, you've got different levels of tourists, haven't you? You've got tourists who've never been to the area before. You've got tourists like me who love the area and have been there hundreds of times. I know the areas. But me, despite that, I would still keep my dog on a lead. There are so many people who had their dogs off lead and it seemed quite far away from them. And obviously they've not been to the area before, potentially. You don't know where the sheep are just around the corner and the dogs are off lead. So to me, that little bit of etiquette of respecting the countryside, respecting the locals, respecting the animals that live there is really, really important. But that's probably a me thing. Now, obviously, if you're going for a massive walk, you need to be aware of the weather conditions and how they're going to change and potentially affect you and your dog and your safety. Because if our dogs get hot, generally speaking, we take clothes for ourselves, we take extra layers for ourselves, but what about your dog? Do you have an extra layer of coat for them? Do you have a jacket for them in your bag in case they get cold? It's worthwhile, especially if you're hiking high, or along the coastal path where it's windy, or really, really hot. Do you have those extra things for you? So make sure you're packing not just extra clothing for you, but for your dog too. Because if you're out for an 8-hour walk, it's different to go out for half an hour. So for me, if it's raining and I went for a walk around the block now, I wouldn't even think about putting my dog's coat on. I'll be like, mate, it's half an hour. We'll be home again in the water. You'll be fine. But if I'm hiking the Lake District, I will put a coat on him because I know I'm going to be out for 3 or 4 hours and I don't want him to get cold and chilly. So he has his jacket on. So again, it's just thinking about these things. What do I actually need to take? And partly a little bit of preparation for this. It's not about when you're actually going on a big leak. It's about beforehand. First aid training. Do you know how to look after your dog? Should they have heat exhaustion? Should they get tired? Should they get hypothermic? Do you know how to actually care for them? And that's why training canine first aid to me is very, very important. So that you know how to recognise the signs of dehydration, hypothermia, etc., and how to actually help them through it. So that might be something else to look at, first aid training. But recognise when they are starting to feel tired, give them rest, be aware of all that stuff. Now, naturally, in the UK, especially, we have the microchipping law. And we also have the tag law that your dog has to have a tag on them. Regardless of whether they have a microchip, they still need a tag. To me, that is very, very important when you're hiking. Because what if you get separated? What if you fall over and you drop the lead and your dog runs off? You want to be able to reunite it with your dog. So most people don't have a microchip scanner, especially if you're up a mountain. But a lot of people will be able to have a tag and have a phone on them and ring. So make sure they're labelled as well. Now, obviously, some of these things I want to talk about some personal things in a moment, but let's get the facts out of the way. The other thing to think about is after your walk. So after you've been for your big hike with your dog, what are we going to do then? Now, it's worthwhile noting that some dogs are going to need a good rest after that. Everyone's different. Some dogs need a rest, some dogs don't need a rest, but they're likely to need a good rest. You're likely to need to check them over to make sure their paws are okay, because we all know that dogs have a really high pain threshold. They might have cut their paw, grazed their paw, and not even mentioned it. Ren did that when he was on holiday. Tiny little graze on his paw, didn't even make a murmur a sound. But when he was laying on the sofa, I noticed it. Went, oh, there's a little bit of a sore patch there. So do you have things like that with you to give them a paw balm? If they have a limp or anything, do you know how to help them get better with that? But also think about, depending on where you are again, ticks. It's worthwhile checking and knowing how to check for and how to remove ticks should they find them. Because sadly, a lot of countryside, you do end up with little furry friends to take, or not furry, little insect friends to take home with you. So you don't want to take them home with you. And giving them some time off. So I know, for example, when I took Rem out this time, we went on a really, really, really long hike. The next day, he did a little bit less. And then the next day, he'd do a bit more. So we kind of had rest day, full day to help him recover. Because to me, that's really important. We do the same for us. Why don't we do the same for them? Now, I have been in a situation where I've had to call for help in the middle of a walk, in the depths of nowhere. It was from home. Me and my husband decided to take, I think it was for our wedding anniversary one year, actually. Dave was about 14 months old, something like that. And we decided to do a really nice walk. It was summer, but it was a mild summer's day, nice and early. We went out for about 8 miles, and obviously he was a young dog. It was the longest he'd ever walked. He must have been about 18 months old. And as the day got on, it got a little bit warmer. It was cloudy and the sun came out a little bit. So it was a warm day, not hot, but warm. And about 3/4 of the way round, all of a sudden, Dave's legs, he started wobbling a little bit and turned to jelly. Now, if you've listened to a previous episode, you'll know about this already, because I've talked about it on the podcast before, I'm sure. His legs went to jelly, and he started wobbling, and it was almost like he couldn't walk. It was like he was hardly could weight bear on his back legs. And we stopped. We sat him under a bush. We gave him a rest, gave him a drink, and we waited. He tried to get up, and he couldn't walk again. He was all jelly. And we probably waited for about 20 minutes, and we were like, what are we going to do? He is, at that point, with 38, 40 kilogram, massive Labrador. I can't carry him home. My husband can't carry him home. He's too big. We might have been able to lift him for 100 yards and put him down. But to walk the probably an extra 3 miles back, no way were we going to be able to do that. So what are we going to do? And I was like, I don't know what we're going to do. Every time we tried to get up, he was still jelly-like. So out came the OS map. And again, this is where preparation is key. Always carry an OS map with you. Or nowadays, have the app. It's so much easier. But you need to know where you are and how to get out of that and how to get help. So we ended up, I sat there looking at my OS map, going, right, where's the nearest road? And I basically had to call my mum and say, Mum, we've got a problem. Dave can't walk. He's hurt himself. He's injured. Can you come and pick us up? And I had to direct her. I was like, basically, this is the road. If you head to here and turn left, ring me or have one of the kids ring me when you're on the way, and I'll tell you where to find us, and we'll try and find a spot where we can wait. And then, thankfully, we weren't too far from that way. I think we were about a 5-minute walk. And after 20 minutes of resting, he was okay to walk. But we're like, even though he's walking okay now, I'm not walking another 3 miles with him because there's clearly something wrong. So my mum had to come rescue us mid-walk. It turns out, again, if you come to the episode, you'll know about this. It was his first ever ERC flare-up, and we've obviously monitored his life ever since and never had another big flare-up like that. But it was the first time it happened, because it was the first time in that situation with him. But my point is, we had water on us to help him. We had an OS map so that we knew how to get out, and we had an exit plan. It wasn't an exit plan originally, but we could find one. If you are stuck up a mountain or a fell or on a beach or on a coastal path at that point, how are you going to get help? That's why we rely on things like mountain rescue. But bit of preparation beforehand, knowing how to read the map and having your water can help in the moment to then be able to get them help. So the idea of this episode is to talk a little bit about how to prepare and how to make sure you're getting the best from a good hike with your dog, and making sure that safety and sensible manners, etiquette, etc. are also being taken into account. So hopefully you found it useful. If you've got any walk stories or things to share, any other tips that you can think of that can help people improve or prepare for hikes with their dog, it would be really, really great if you could share those in the comments. As always, do check out the links in the podcast, links to our Paw Academy, our online training hub, and you can add yourself onto our email newsletter list so you get to hear from us every week. Hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll catch up with you really soon.
If you love listening to the podcast, why not check out the Potter Paw Academy for practical dog training advice and how-to videos. The hub is broken down into sections, and hundreds of pre-recorded videos are there for you to start watching whenever you choose. You can watch them back as many times as you like. You also get to talk to other community members and discuss your training and benefit from live Q&As with myself where you can get your questions answered. Why not make use of our 3-day free trial where you can access all of the content on the hub absolutely free for 3 days. The link is in the description below, so do check that out. And I can't wait to see you in the hub.
Thank you for listening to The Dynamic Dog Owner with me, Debbie Potter. See you next time.